Hey everyone, 99% of you watching aren't subscribed. Let's change that. Hit that subscribe button, and at 1,000 subscribers, we'll drop special stories just for you.
The war had ended 3 days ago, though the sky above Arinder still burned. Commander Elias Rourke stood on a fractured balcony of what had once been a Varelian observation spire. Below him, the alien capital stretched in luminous ruin. Its organic towers collapsed inward like wilted flowers, its once radiant transit bridges snapped and dangling over glowing chasms. Human dreadnoughts hung in low orbit, their silhouettes drifting across a bruised violet sky streaked with ash. He had imagined victory would feel louder. Instead, there was only wind and the distant groan of cooling crystal. Arinder had not been built like a human city. It had been grown. The architecture curved like bone and bloomed like coral, threaded with faint veins of bioluminescence that still pulsed weakly beneath cracked surfaces. Even destroyed, the place seemed alive, wounded rather than demolished. Commander Rourke. Lieutenant Hale's voice crackled through the comm embedded in Elias's jaw. Recon drones are mapping the central palace. Thermals reading cold across most sectors. Mose? Elias asked, eyes scanning the horizon. A pause. Static. There's a signal, Hale said carefully. Large mass. Deep within the palace core. It's fluctuating. How so? Like a heartbeat, sir. Slowing. Elias exhaled slowly. 3 months of war. 47 engagements. Entire Varelian fleets torn apart in orbit. Reports of psychic interference. Coordinated counterattacks. Sudden collapses of alien formations, as if their command structure had shattered mid-battle. They had said the Queen directed it all. They had said kill the Queen, and the war would end. But the war had ended before they ever found her. Prep a squad, Elias ordered. We're going in. The approach to the palace felt wrong. No defensive turrets activated. No swarms of Varelian soldiers burst from concealed alcoves. No psychic pressure assaulted his neural shield. The great arched entrance yawned open, fractured down the center, as though something enormous had forced its way through from the inside. Elias led 5 Marines across the threshold. The interior defied every expectation human intelligence had constructed. Instead of metallic corridors or command consoles, they found vast chambers ribbed with translucent pillars. The floor beneath their boots flexed slightly, organic and resilient. Dim light pulsed through the walls in erratic rhythms, like a dying nervous system is firing. Feels like we're walking through a corpse, muttered Sergeant Imani. Stay sharp, Elias replied. They advanced deeper, guided by the erratic thermal signal on Elias's wrist display. As they descended into the palace's core, the temperature rose, not with fire, but with biological heat. Then the drones went dark. One by one, the small hovering scouts blinked out of existence on the display. No impact signatures. Hale reported remotely, voice tight. They're just offline. A pressure built behind Elias's eyes. Subtle, like standing too close to a speaker, emitting a frequency you couldn't quite hear. Helmets sealed, he ordered. Neural shields to max. They rounded the final bend in the corridor and stepped into a cathedral of devastation. The dome overhead had shattered open to the sky, its curved plates of living crystal fractured like broken ice. Ash drifted down in lazy spirals. At the chamber's center lay something immense. The Varelian Queen. She was larger than any war form they had encountered in battle. Her body rose in layered arcs of iridescent chitin, each segment etched with filigree patterns that shimmered faintly even in decay. For vast wings sprawled behind her, torn and punctured, their once luminous membranes shredded into ribbons. And she was bleeding, not red. Her blood glowed, a deep indigo light that pooled beneath her like fallen starlight. Where it touched the organic floor, it hissed and dimmed. Holy! Sergeant Imani breathed. Elias lifted a hand, silencing her. The thermal signal pulsed weakly from the center of the Queen's thorax, where her armor had split open. The wound was not clean. It looked deliberate, jagged, precise, as if something had cut through her core with surgical intent. Positions, Elias whispered. The Marines fanned out, rifles trained. The Queen's eyes opened. They were vast and multifaceted, each facet catching the falling ash and reflecting it like fragments of broken galaxies. They fixed on Elias, not on the weapons, not on the soldiers. On him, the pressure behind his eyes intensified. Human, the word did not echo in his ears. It unfolded inside his mind. Two of the Marines staggered, clutching their helmets. "Psychic contact," one shouted, shield spiking. "Whole formation." Elias barked, but the voice was not attacking. It was frayed, weak, human. Elias swallowed and stepped forward despite protocol. "I'm here," he said, unsure why he answered aloud. The Queen's wings twitched, scraping crystal against crystal. The sound was brittle, like bones grinding together. Beneath her massive form, Elias noticed something that tightened his chest. Eggs, dozens of them, oval, translucent, each the size of a human torso, every single one shattered. Fragments of shell lay scattered like broken glass. The contents within had long since cooled into ashen residue. "Sir," Imani whispered, "those weren't destroyed by orbital fire." She was right. The blast patterns were wrong. These had been ruptured from above, focused, repeated strikes. Execution. The Queen's consciousness brushes again, trembling. "You have come to finish it." Her mind felt nothing like the terrifying hive intelligence described in war briefings. There was no overwhelming chorus, no crushing psychic dominance, only a solitary presence. Fading, Elias lowered his rifle slightly. "You're the last," he said. The Queen's gaze shifted upward toward the broken dome, toward the streaked sky where human ships drifted. "I am what remains." The faint pulsing light within her thorax faltered, then resumed, slower. Behind Elias, one of the Marines whispered, "Commander, orders?" He looked at the dying monarch of an annihilated species. He remembered the briefings, the casualty reports, the footage of Aurelian war forms tearing through human cruisers with impossible coordination. He also remembered the reports of Aurelian ships attacking one another weeks before humanity's final offensive. The unexplained collapses, the erratic maneuvers. Something had already broken them. The Queen's thoughts pressed closer, fragile as smoke. "Why did you silence us?" Elias felt the question like a blade. "We didn't," he began, but stopped. "Did they?" He had followed orders. Trusted intelligence. Trusted Dr. Malvek's analysis that the Varelians were preparing a synchronized extermination of human colonies. But looking at the shattered eggs, at the wound carved into her core, at the hollow emptiness echoing in her psychic voice, this did not feel like the aftermath of an invasion. It felt like the aftermath of betrayal. The Queen's eyes dimmed slightly. Her voice and his mind dropped to a whisper barely held together. "The lattice is gone." The word pulsed with meaning he did not fully grasp. A network, a connection, a song abruptly cut off. Her wings shifted again, exposing the wound in her thorax more clearly. Deep within, something luminous flickered. Failing, Elias realized a thermal. Reading wasn't just a heartbeat. It was a countdown. He took another step forward, lowering his weapon completely. Behind him, his squad hesitated. In orbit above, human ships drifted as victors. And in the ruined heart of an alien palace, Commander Elias Rourke stood face to face with the dying queen of a species humanity had just erased. The war was over, but as her mind brushed his one final time, aching, alone, and terribly afraid, Elias understood that the truth of it had only just begun. The chamber seemed to contract around them as the queen's breathing grew ragged. Elias signaled his squad to fall back to the perimeter. Reluctantly, boots scraped across the organic floor as the Marines retreated toward the fractured pillars. Weapons remained raised, but no one fired. The Queen's vast gaze never left Elias. "You are not like the others," she murmured into his mind. The psychic contact was unstable now, no longer a steady current, more like a dying transmission flickering through static. Each word carried strain. Elias felt it behind his eyes, a pressure building along the base of his skull. "Reduce neural shielding by 10%, he ordered quietly. "Sir," Imani hissed. "Do it." He needed clarity. The shield hum softened. The Queen's presence sharpened instantly, still weak, but more defined. Not an invasion, not an assault. A voice speaking across a chasm. You said we silenced you. Elias said, explain. The Queen's wings twitched faintly. Shards of crystalline membrane drifted down like snow. We were many, she began. Not a hive, as you believe. We were convergence. Images flooded his mind. Faint, fractured, but vivid enough to steal his breath. A web of light stretching across planets. Vast stellar nodes shimmering like constellations brought to life. Individual Varelians standing beneath luminous spires, their minds intertwined, not merged into sameness, but harmonized. Distinct notes in an immense composition. The lattice, she whispered. Elias staggered slightly as the vision intensified. He felt it, a constant awareness of others, a gentle undercurrent of presence, not control, connection. The Queen at its center, not commanding, but anchoring, holding the structure steady like gravity holds orbit. It wasn't military coordination, Elias muttered. It was existence. The image shifted violently. A human face appeared in the Queen's memory, angular, sharp-eyed, framed by silvering hair. Elias recognized him instantly. Dr. Adrian Malvec, the architect of xenocognitive warfare theory. The man who had convinced the Earth Council that the Varelian lattice was a weapon, a telepathic network capable of overwhelming human minds if allowed to expand. Malvec had claimed he'd deciphered fragments of Varelian transmissions years before open contact. You knew him, Elias said, post-quickening. He came before your fleets, the Queen replied. Her thoughts trembled, as if brushing against something corrosive. He called himself an emissary, a seeker of understanding. The memory unfolded. Malvec standing within this very chamber, alive, composed, almost reverent as he studied the living architecture. He had worn no armor, no visible weapons, only a neural interface rig along his spine. He listened to us. The Queen continued. He asked how we sustained unity across distance, how we prevented dissent from fracturing us. Elias felt the shift in tone, sorrow tightening into something harder. We believed curiosity was peace. The vision warped again. Malvec connecting his interface to a crystalline conduit at the chamber's core. Not forcibly. The Queen had allowed it. The lattice had welcomed him, cautiously, tasting his mind. He said he wished to bridge our kinds. She whispered. Elias clenched his fists. What did he do? The Queen's psychic field faltered, then surged in a painful flash of memory. Noise. Not sound, but distortion. Malvec injecting something into the lattice. A pattern disruption. A harmonic inversion. Elias felt it like a migraine detonating inside his skull. The beautiful web of light fractured. Threads snapped. Notes turned dissonant. Minds that had been gently interwoven began to misinterpret one another. Fear amplified. Misunderstandings cascading at exponential speed. He taught us silence, the Queen said. The lattice collapsed. Not instantly, but catastrophically. Without the steadying presence of shared awareness, entire planetary populations spiraled into confusion. Varelians, who had always felt the subtle reassurance of communal existence, suddenly experienced isolation for the first time in their species' history. Panic became aggression. Defense protocols activated against perceived threats that were once trusted neighbors. Civil war bloomed across star systems. Elias stumbled back, tearing his shield settings up another 5%. That's impossible, he whispered. He said you were preparing an invasion, that you were amplifying your network to reach Earth. We were repairing it, the Queen replied weakly. We were trying to mend what he severed. The shattered eggs beneath her seemed to glow brighter in his peripheral vision. And the signal intercepts? Elias demanded. The ones proving you targeted our colonies? The Queen's mind flickered with confusion. We sent warnings. Warnings. When the lattice fractured, we detected your fleets mobilizing. We tried to communicate distress. But our harmonics were unstable. What you received may have been our cries. Elias's stomach turned. Malvec had presented those transmissions to the Council as coded attack vectors, proof that the Varelians were mapping human neural frequencies for assimilation. Had he known they were distress signals? Or had he twisted them deliberately? Behind him, Imani shifted uneasily. Commander, Orbital Command is requesting status. They're preparing demolition charges for the palace. Demolition, to erase any remaining trace. Stand by. Elias snapped. The queen's breathing grew shallower. Indigo blood pooled wider around her. Your fleets arrived as we fought ourselves, she murmured. You believe we were united against you. We were already dying. Elias replayed battle footage in his mind. The erratic maneuvers, the inexplicable friendly fire incidents among Varelian ships before humanity's final push. They hadn't been executing some elaborate strategy. They'd been tearing themselves apart. And Malvek? Elias asked, where did he go? The queen's thoughts darkened. He severed his connection before the collapse completed. He feared what he had begun. Another image surfaced. Malvek retreating to the palace corridors as Varelian guards convulse in confusion, their psychic bonds unraveling. He had not stayed to witness the full destruction. He disappeared 2 months before he declared war, Elias said quietly. He left you a story, the queen whispered, and you believed it. The accusation wasn't sharp. That made it worse. Elias felt something inside him fracture, not like the lattice, not explosively, but with slow, grinding inevitability. How many? He asked. The queen did not need clarification. All who could hear me are gone. He looked again at the shattered eggs. Those. Her consciousness tightened around the memory. My daughters would have restored balance. They were unbound, born after the lattice's fall. They would not fear solitude. And they were killed. Yes, the demolition countdown had begun. Elias could feel it in the subtle vibration beneath his boots, orbital ships aligning, targeting solutions locking into place. The palace's organic walls shuddered intermittently, fissures widening along the fractured dome overhead. Commander, Hale's voice pressed urgently through the comm, we have 5 minutes before control collapse. You need to extract. Now! Elias didn't respond. He stood alone near the queen's massive head. His squad had withdrawn to the outer corridor on his orders, though none of them were comfortable leaving him within reach of the alien monarch. The queen's breathing had grown shallow, each inhale a labored tremor. Indigo blood spread in branching veins across the floor, its glow dimming as it cooled. Your sky trembles, she murmured into his mind. He had reduced his neural shield again. The psychic contact was no longer painful, just intimate, like standing beside someone at the edge of a grave. They're going to bring this place down, he said quietly. They think you're still a threat. A faint ripple of something like amusement brushed his thoughts. I am no threat. Human. I am an echo. He knelt beside her, close enough now to see the intricate etchings carved along her exoskeleton. They were not random biological patterns. They formed spirals, branching arcs, records perhaps. Generational memory inscribed into living armor. You said one remains. Elias said, an egg. Her wings shifted with visible effort. Beneath the torn membrane and splintered crystal lay a single unbroken oval, half hidden in shadow. Unlike the others, it pulsed faintly, steady, stubborn. Elias felt it before he fully saw it. A whisper of presence. Small, unformed. She sleeps, the queen said softly. Unbound by the lattice. She will not awaken into silence as we did. The demolition timer in his display blinked. For 12. You're asking me to take her, Elias said. I am asking you to give her what we cannot. Why me? The queen's gaze deepened, light flickering behind multifaceted eyes. Because you listened. The word struck harder than accusation. Elias swallowed. I'm a soldier, he said. I've led assaults against your fleets. You were guided by fear, she replied gently. As we were. The chamber groaned as a distant explosion echoed through the upper levels. Fragments of crystal rained down, shattering against the floor in a spray of luminous dust. 3 minutes. Hale shouted. Commander, respond. Elias muted the channel. He reached cautiously toward the egg. The moment his gloved hand brushed its surface, a flicker of sensation brushed back. Not invasive, not structured thought. Instinct, warmth, curiosity. His breath caught. The queen felt it too. She knows you are there. I can't take her back to Earth, he whispered. They'll study her, weaponize her, or worse, then do not return to Earth. The simplicity of the statement hollowed him. You're asking me to abandon everything. I am asking you to choose something else. The wound in her thorax pulsed erratically now. Each flickered dimmer than the last. Why don't you try again? Elias asked suddenly. The lattice, if you anchor to her, if you form anew. Pain surged through his skull as her reaction rippled outward. No, the force of it startled him. The lattice was born of many voices. It cannot be forced from two. And her thought trailed off. He felt her exhaustion like gravity. I am unraveling human. The demolition timer blinked 2:01. Above them, a beam of orbital fire lanced down in the distance, collapsing part of the outer city. The shock wave rippled through the palace, splitting one of the great pillars with a deafening crack. Elias looked at the egg again, then at the queen. You said you tried to reignite it, he said softly. That's what did this. Yes, you tore yourself apart trying to bring them back. A pause. I could not bear their silence. The admission felt unbearably intimate. I know what silence feels like, Elias said quietly. He hadn't meant to speak the thought aloud. But suddenly he was remembering the battlefield debris after the first major engagement. The silent of comm channels that should have been filled with his squad's voices. The empty bunks aboard his ship. The queen's mind brushed his grief carefully, respectfully. You have lost your choir too. The words undid him. Another tremor shook the chamber. Cracks spiderweb across the dome, widening toward the open sky. Commander! Hale's voice broke through his mute override. You have 30 seconds before full structural collapse. This is a direct order. Extract immediately. Elias stared into Queen's fading eyes. What do you want? He asked one final time. The answer came as a fragile whisper, barely held together. Human, just let me die. There was no fear in it, only release. Her body convulsed weakly, light flickering deep within her core, like a star at the end of fusion. If I leave you, Elias said, voice breaking, the demolition will bury you alive. Then stay. The request was not selfish. It was simple. Stay until the end. Elias removed his helmet. The air burned his lungs, metallic, sweet, and heavy with particulate ash, but he needed no barrier between them now. He stepped closer and placed his bare hand against the fractured edge of her exoskeleton near the wound. The surface was warm, trembling. Her consciousness enveloped his, not overwhelming, not dominating, grateful. You are not what he said you were, she murmured. Malvec, Elias whispered. Yes, neither are you. The demolition timer vanished from his display. Impact imminent. I can end it quickly, he said. She did not hesitate. Thank you. He drew his plasma pistol with steady hands. He positioned it carefully at the exposed fissure in her thorax, where the remaining energy flickered. Her mind opened fully then, not as a weapon, but as a memory. He felt sunlight on alien oceans, the hum of 1,000 minds in gentle harmony, the sensation of being part of something vast yet intimate, not erased within it, but supported. Then he felt the fracture, the collapse, the endless, screaming quiet. Her gratitude poured through him like warm rain. Tell her, the thought faltered. Tell her what? He whispered urgently. That we sang. The palace began to fall. Elias pressed the barrel against the glowing core. I will, he promised. He pulled the trigger. White light erupted between them. For a heartbeat, her mind flared, brilliant, expansive, like a supernova contained within fragile flesh. Then it softened, dimmed, and went out. The colossal body slackened, wings settling with a final, shuddering sigh. The oppressive psychic presence vanished. Not violently, gently. Silence flooded the chamber. But it was no longer the screaming void she had endured. It was stillness. Elias stood there for one suspended second, hands still resting against cooling armor. Then instinct roared back. He grabbed the egg, cradling it against his chest, and sprinted toward the collapsing corridor as the first demolition charge struck the palace core. Behind him, crystal and living stone cascaded inward, burying the last queen of the Varelians beneath a storm of ash and light. Ahead of him, through smoke and falling debris, lay escape. And in his arms, faint but steady, a new pulse answered the dying echoes of a broken song. They called him a hero at first. Commander Elias Rourke, the man who led the final ground assault on Arinder, the officer who confirmed the Queen's death, the soldier who ended the war. Medals were prepared before he even returned to orbit. He never collected them. The official report was simple: Palace unstable. No viable life forms detected. Target neutralized. He had altered the thermal logs himself, corrupted the final scans, blamed interference from residual psychic energy for the data gaps. In the chaos of planetary demolition, no one questioned it. Wars ended with paperwork, not autopsies. But Elias didn't board the Victory cruiser. Instead, he diverted, under the cover of debris fields and scrambled signals from collapsing Varelian infrastructure. He accessed a reserve hangar and commandeered a long-range reconnaissance shuttle. Small, underarmed, built for mapping, not combat, perfect for disappearing. The egg pulsed faintly in the shielded containment field beside him as he launched into the fractured sky. Below, Arinder burned. Above, human ships formed triumphant formations against the stars. He angled away from both. For the first week, he expected pursuit. None came. Human command was busy consolidating victory, broadcasting triumph across the colonies. News feeds hailed the fall of the Hive Tyrant. Analysts debated how close humanity had come to annihilation. Dr. Adrian Malvec's name surfaced again, posthumously honored. Visionary. Savior. The man who had seen the threat early. Elias shut off the transmissions. The egg's glow grew stronger each day. At first, the psychic presence within was no more than instinctual flickers, like electrical impulses in a forming brain. He kept the containment field active, but lowered the barriers enough to allow environmental input. Light cycles, subtle sound vibrations, gravity shifts. He spoke sometimes. He didn't know if she could hear. "My name is Elias," he said once, adjusting the shuttle's course beyond map space. "I don't know what you'll call yourself." A faint warmth brushed his thoughts in response. Not language. Recognition. 3 weeks after Arinder, the egg cracked. It happened quietly. Elias was charting an unregistered nebula, vast, swirling blues and violets stretching like spilled ink across the stars, when a containment field flickered with motion alerts. He turned. Hairline fractures traced across the shell surface, light leaking through in delicate threads. He approached slowly. "It's okay," he murmured, though he had no idea if that word held meaning to her. The shell split with a soft crystalline chime. What emerged was nothing like the colossal queen who had died beneath his hand. She was small, no larger than a terrestrial fox. Her body was sleek, pearlescent, the chitin translucent enough to hint at faint bioluminescent currents beneath. 2 delicate wings unfurled uncertainly, catching the cabin light in iridescent shimmer. Her eyes opened. They were vast for her small frame, multifaceted like her mother's, but bright, curious, alive. She did not scream into his mind. She did not command. She tilted her head. A tentative brush touched his consciousness, so soft he might have imagined it. A question. Elias felt his throat tighten. "Hi," he whispered. The hatchling chirped, a gentle, melodic trill, not the deep resonance of the queen's voice. Something lighter, unshaped. He slowly deactivated the containment field. She stepped forward on delicate limbs, claws tapping softly against the metal floor. Her wings fluttered experimentally, stirring the air. Then she reached him, not physically, mentally. The connection formed like 2 fingertips touching in the dark. He felt impressions, light, warmth, the hum of the ship's engines, the distant swirl of the nebula outside. She absorbed sensations eagerly, mapping them. And beneath it all, something else. Absence. She felt no lattice, no chorus of minds. Only him, only herself. A flicker of uncertainty rippled through her. Elias swallowed. "Your mother," he said softly. "She told me to tell you something." The hatchling's gaze fixed on him, luminous and attentive. "She said you sang." The words felt inadequate, but as he spoke them, he felt something shift in her mind, not memory, not recognition, possibility. A faint harmonic hum began to form between them, not imposed, invited. He didn't know how to sing the way her species had. He didn't know the harmonics of a shattered lattice, but he opened his thoughts deliberately. Images, ocean waves from Earth's coasts, wind through pine forests, the laughter of his lost squad in the mess hall, the quiet hum of city at night, the ache of grief, the warmth of hope. He offered them, not as control, as sharing. The hatchling absorbed it all, her mind shimmering with new patterns. She responded instinctively, sending back impressions of color, of light refracting through crystal structures, of the simple joy of movement. The connection deepened, not into a hive, into a duet. Weeks turned into months. Elias never set a course for Earth. Instead, he navigated beyond charted trade routes, beyond military patrol grids, into the silent frontier where no faction claimed dominance. He modified the shuttle's transponder to broadcast as debris, masked its energy signature, learned to live off minimal rations and careful resource management. The hatchling grew. Her wings strengthened, spanning wider with each passing week. Her bioluminescence brightened, responding to emotional shifts, soft gold when curious, deep violet when contemplative. She never tried to overwhelm his mind. When she reached for him, it was always gentle, consensual. Sometimes, in the quiet stretches between stars, she would perch near the viewport and extend her thoughts outward, tasting the emptiness. At first, Elias feared she would feel the same crushing isolation her mother had described. But she did not recoil. She explored. Solitude for her was not trauma. It was canvas. One evening, if the concept of evening held meaning in deep space, they drifted near a young star system still forming. Gas clouds swirled in luminous ribbons. Protoplanets coalesced in slow, majestic spirals. The hatchling pressed closer to the glass. Her mind brushed his with growing excitement. He felt it too. Not the echo of a lost empire. Something new. "You want to go down there?" he asked softly. A pulse of bright gold answered him. He adjusted their course. As the shuttle descended toward an untouched world bathed in newborn starlight, Elias realized something profound. The lattice had not died. It had transformed. It no longer required thousands of voices woven into one. It began with two. A human who had learned too late what fear could destroy, and a young alien who had never known the silence her mother feared. The hatchling's thoughts intertwined with his again, stronger now, clearer, not a command, not a dependency, a harmony forming. In the space where a dying queen had once murmured, "Human, just let me die," a different truth took root. Life did not always need a chorus. Sometimes it began with a single, fragile note, and the courage to answer it